Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. I have my Legends and Lattes mug from Fable Coffee and a latte. Appropriate, right? Because it's a latte mug. So today's video is going to be my January reading wrap up. You know how this goes. We're just going to be going through all of the books that I read in January and giving you my thoughts on them. The first book that I read in January was When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. Apologize for my voice. I have a sinus infection, which is probably TMI. But we're trucking through it and trying to get better. So this book was very, very hyped, and I was excited about it because it was a romantasy that was getting a lot of traction, and it had dragons in it. Unfortunately, I don't know how I feel about this book. I'm not saying I hated it. I gave it 3 stars, but for the amount of hype that is behind this book, I don't get it. I felt like the pacing was weird. And okay, so let me just try to summarize this book for you, or at least give you the synopsis. Essentially, from what I think is in the synopsis, it's really hard to summarize this book. There's a woman who is like a vigilante, so she kills bad people for this company, and this company owns her, so she's kind of like a slave, and she ends up messing with the wrong people. They come after her friend, and she ends up being kind of thrown into this tournament arena situation where it's basically like the Roman Colosseum. You're gonna die. And things kind of go from there with this mysterious stranger that she may have a past with. I honestly couldn't tell you the synopsis at this point. At least what's actually in the synopsis. I could tell you that. So, and there's dragons in this world, and they're called moons because a long time ago, the dragons a lot of the dragons left and during a war, and they go into the sky and they crystallize, and they curl up in a ball and crystallize, and they're called moons, and sometimes they'll fall, which is terrifying, and they can break and all this stuff. So it's they can also hatch when the moon hatched, right? I thought all of the dragons in this world were gone, they were crystallized, but they're not, which you get into later in the book. But that's a big thing, and they talk about there's 3 different breeds of dragons. Anyway, so the pacing was weird, and while it took its time, it was 700 pages, over 700 pages, okay? While it took its time, I felt like the world building was slow and not much really happened plot-wise. And other things felt rushed. It was weird. The vibe was weird for me. It's really hard to describe also, which is unfortunate. I do like the dragons and that part of the world and that part of the story, and I will continue to see what happens, but there was just so much, again, 700 pages, right? I felt like all of that was build up. And I think that's completely unnecessary. I think there should not be a book that's 700 pages of buildup. I think if you are desperately trying to understand this world, you have to be really in-depth, because it uses, many fantasy books. I'm not saying it's wrong. I think there is more world building in this than a lot of romantasies, because they use different words for times and tenures and age, those types of things. They have different words for all of those. So if you really want to get in and understand all of that, it'll take you some time of flipping back and forth with the glossary and stuff. I just kind of go with it because I like to be immersed in fantasy, and I don't necessarily need to know if it's been 10 years or 20 years unless it's super, super relevant to the story, and sometimes it was. I felt like all of it was built up, which was insane. And I feel like if you don't, you could get potentially lost if you're not going to in-depth dive into the world building. So it's kind of shocking to me that it is as popular as it is. I didn't like the dynamics between the main female character and the male main character were fine, but I felt like it was off. I felt like it was rushed. I felt like the relationship wasn't developed very well. And there's probably reasons for that in the second book because, like I said, this is a lot of build-up. But I felt like the development, the dynamic, and the speed at which things happened didn't feel right. I wasn't rooting for them. I didn't care. And if you're not rooting for a romantasy couple, it's kind of hard to read the book, you know? So there was a couple of reveals and some things that are a little bit intriguing. So like I said, I'm going to continue, but I was expecting to like really love this, and I don't get it. Again, I gave it 3 stars. I'm not saying it's bad, but I didn't understand the intense hype that this book has and the following this book has. So maybe that'll change for me in book 2, but for now that was just kind of like, I don't know. I just didn't get it, which is okay. Not everybody's gonna get everything. And then I read Taylor Swift, A Little Golden Book Biography. This was a Christmas present from my mom, and I thought it was really adorable. And there's like not really anything to say about that. It was really cute. The illustrations were cute. I read it in like a few minutes. It was adorable. What can I say? And then I read Quicksilver by Callie Hart. And I do get the hype for this. I was trying to read like kind of hyped up stuff, you know? I do get the hype for this. This was very good. I was kind of shocked how much I liked it. I thought after reading like When the Moon Hatched and other things like that, I was like, maybe I'm not going to like it that much. I really, really liked this. It was really good. At least I thought it was. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. This one, you're following Saris, who is, I think her name is pronounced Saris. My mind's kind of foggy right now. She is a thief in the mortal world, and in her world, it's kind of like a desert. So there's a lot of water rations and just a lot of harsh environment. And she ends up stealing some armor that is very, very valuable from a guard. I don't know if it was like off of a guard, but she gets his armor and she steals it. And she's going to be in like huge trouble if this gets out. So she runs back to like her kind of hideout, and her friend is like, you have to get rid of this. She finds out her brother took it and ran with it to try to sell it, whatever. And he gets surrounded by guards. So she turns herself in his place, and she's taken to the queen, and she's going to be executed. But instead of being executed, she does something weird while she's dying, and it opens this portal to this Fey world through this Quicksilver pool. And a Fey comes out and takes her, and he's supposed to be like death. And he takes her into this other world where she finds out that Fey exist and are real, and then kind of more about Quicksilver and this magic, and that maybe she has some alchemy magic, which is really, really interesting. So, really, really liked this. The story was interesting. I liked the different elements. I loved the alchemy parts of this story. I thought that was kind of unique and really, really just cool and interesting. She's also like a blacksmith. She was like, she worked for a blacksmith on top of being a thief. And that was a really cool element. Like, I just liked all of that in the story. I will say there's a lot of tropes and things that we've seen before, but of course there is. That's kind of why we like these types of books sometimes. It's hard to be something absolutely completely new in a genre like this. And it is a little bit reminiscent of ACOTAR and other stories we've read. That being said, I really enjoyed the magic system, the adventure, and the characters a lot. The alchemy elements were really, really cool, and I appreciated those a lot. Like, that was really cool. That was really, like, unique about the story, I think. I liked the little twists you get along the way. And I do think, if I had any critiques for this, I do think I wish it had been a little bit more slow burn. But that's kind of a personal preference, so not everybody would feel that way, I'm sure. For a second in the middle of this book, I felt like it wasn't as good and wasn't going to live up to the hype. Then it picked up again, and I got pretty invested, and I'm very excited to read book 2. They also took a character in here that I thought I wouldn't like that much and made him like really endearing and made me really like him. Yeah, I really loved this. It was so good. I'm very excited to read book 2 now that comes out in November, and I think it's called Brimstone. I'm just curious to see what's going to happen. There is some kind of like interesting elements that I wasn't expecting / don't love at the end, but I'm interested to see what the author does with it. The next book that I read is Phantasma by Kaylee Smith, and this was like a fantasy dark romance that is described as being kind of like Caraval-esque, between Caraval and Kingdom of the Wicked, or Throne of the Fallen. Caraval and Throne of the Fallen, spicy dark romance. And so I was kind of like, okay, I could either love this, or I could think I'm gonna love it and it just be like okay, or not like it, you know? Like, it could go a lot of ways for me. I ended up kind of really, really liking this, and I enjoyed it honestly more than I thought I would. Essentially, in this world, it's set in New Orleans. There's magic kind of woven throughout the world, but it's not super common. There's like also just regular people, a lot of regular people. And our main character is a family of necromancers, which is curious. But there's only like one person that holds the magic, and once they die, they have like a time limit where you can absorb their magic and keep it going in the family line. So our main character does that. It's kind of like sacrificing her, what she would want to continue that. And her sister doesn't want her to have to sacrifice this. and they find out that their mom racked up a ton of debt and they're gonna like lose their manor. Because it's still like a little bit old-timey where it's like you have like a cook and all that stuff and you have this really fancy house but you don't necessarily work, that kind of thing. Her sister enters this game called Phantasma. It's this like competitive game that's held in this magical manor that just like mysteriously shows up overnight because she thinks if she wins she can clear the debt. And Phantasma is a competition where most contestants don't make it out alive and the winner is granted a single wish. Phantasma is a cursed manor with twisting corridors and lavish ballrooms and filled with enticing demons and fatal temptations. So the older sister finds out that her little sister entered this competition. She's terrified. She thinks she's going to die. So she ends up entering the competition as well and is trying to find her sister. And is basically just trying to stay alive until she can either win or find her sister. And like I said, I enjoyed this honestly a lot more than I thought I was going to. I guessed the twist pretty early on, but I enjoyed the story a lot. If you wanted Caraval to be darker, more like horror, and also spicy, this book is for you. Like, hands down, this book is for you. I really liked the creepy and scary aspects of this book and of the competition and the game. I also thought the inclusion of and use of the OCD rep was done really well. It's scary, but it's also, I thought there was an author's note at the end of it. She says, you may think that this is like over dramatic or overblown, but like this is what it's like, or can be like for a lot of people, or some people. And I actually really liked that element. I liked the way she made it more fantastical in a way, but the way she did that was, I just really appreciated. I thought it was really brilliant, and while also like bringing attention to it. It was very good. I loved how it was an element in the story while also calling attention to it and it being a real thing that people experience, you know? It was really interesting. I liked the story a lot. It's kind of a one-off, so it is a series, but it sounds like it's going to follow the sister in the next book. So I guess we don't know if the other characters will be in it, but it's like that story kind of wrapped up, and now we're going to have the sister story in the next book, Enchantra. I'm curious to see what the next book entails, but I will absolutely read it. I ended up giving this 4 stars. And then I read Living Fearless by Jamie Winship. Jamie Winship is just like his life is wild, man. He was an FBI agent. He just has crazy stories, and this is kind of his book that he wrote about exchanging the lies of the world and the liberating truth of God. And I really liked this book. It was very good. Jamie's story in particular has been very impactful for me. And I've listened to his Identity podcast episodes from this like retreat that they did. And I love how simply he can just explain God and hearing from him. And it's just challenging and really good. And I enjoyed that read. And then I read The Ever King by L.J. Andrews. This is another one that I had been meaning to get to for a long time. Also really, really liked this one. I thought it was really good. Essentially, you're following a princess who's from the... Oh my. She's like a land fae. So she's got like earth magic, like growing magic. And there's those, and there's like the sea fae, and I'm this is not the words that they use, I don't think, but I'm butchering it a little. And there was a thing that happened where there's like a war between the two fae races, and there's been a barrier that's been set around the earth fae so that the sea fae can't get to them. As a child, the princess befriends the sea fae prince, but he was actually being taken captive and being like imprisoned. So she kind of befriends him and is like trying to be nice to him, and he gives her this coin that is special. And they're separated and life goes on, they grow up. She broke the coin when she was a child and got this mark on her, and she doesn't understand why, and she's never told anyone because she doesn't know what it means. And something happens and the barrier ends up breaking, and he comes, and the prince, they're both adults now, comes back and kidnaps her because he has to free his land because it's been like under this blight and the land is not healing and life is poor and bad, and he's trying to fix all of that for his people. So he kidnaps her and takes her back to his realm kind of as a ransom and wants revenge because her father killed his father. So it's very dramatic, very piratey. He's a pirate captain, so he's got this like ship and all kinds of stuff. I really loved that aspect. The pirate fae aspect I thought was so cool. I thought it was really different. I thought it was really interesting. This is very like Pirates of the Caribbean-esque, those vibes. But the like pirate vibes were immaculate. Loved it. It's a fantasy romance, so like you're kind of expecting that as you go into it. But I ended up giving this 4.5 stars, and my review was like, what was that ending? Did not like that cliffhanger. Like, ma'am, could you not do a cliffhanger like that? I know you want us to read the book too, but like, good grief. Did not like that one bit. I think the cliffhanger also took me by surprise because I was listening to the audiobook and it said I had 30 minutes left of the audiobook and then it just ended. And it turns out that the other like 30 minutes were a peek into one of the other books that she wrote. And I was like, that was cruel. That was a cruel trick. So it's just very jarring for me. But I really enjoyed this book. I think the middle part fell a little bit flat for me, but I really loved the beginning, and the end was also interesting. I love the pirate vibes, and I think if you like Pirates of the Caribbean, I think you'll like this, you know? I enjoyed the magic a lot also, and I'm very curious to see how the duology wraps up. He's called Bloodsinger because his blood is like poisonous, so he'll like put his blood in you and you'll die, but if he sings to it, you won't. I thought that was really cool. I loved that magic. But yeah, I absolutely finished the duology. I'm very curious to see what else happens in the story. Also kind of glad that it's just a duology. I don't have far to go. And then, of course, I have to be careful what I say with this because spoilers, but of course I read Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. The cover is so shiny, so I apologize, but you know I read this. You know I devoured this. I loved it. I mean, I feel like at some point you can get so immersed in a world and it can just become your favorite that you feel like almost no matter what the author does, you're going to love it. That's kind of me for the Empyrean series. So I gave it 4.5 stars, which I will get into. But I loved it. Fantastic. I just love this world so much. Like I said. So I can't give you a synopsis of this book because it's the third one, you know? I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. But it's a Dragon Rider War College, and we're continuing the journey on that. I gave it 4.5 stars simply because of all the journeys and bartering that happened in this. I just felt like it was a little bit much. I still liked it. I still enjoyed it. I'm just saying it was a little bit much. And not enough answers for my liking, Rebecca. I would like more answers to all of the questions that I have had since like book 1 or 2. Okay. I still love it. I'm still in love with this series. I was kind of in a little bit of a reading slump. It broke me a little bit. I'm sad we won't get answers for a while. Potentially like a couple years. I don't know, whenever she's going to write the 4th book. But I loved it, of course. I also finally, after forever meaning to read this, I also read Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I really liked this. You're following a main character who, in this world, people have magic, they have like abilities, and it can be like mundane abilities, or it could be really cool abilities. And if you're powerless, they think you're kind of like a blight upon society and you're going to weaken the bloodline, so they want to kill you. Crazy. So she is a powerless, but she's learned how to kind of like fake having an ability, which is interesting. And she ends up getting entered into the competition. It's kind of like the Hunger Games. It's kind of like pitched as Hunger Games-esque. So she's entered into this like competition thing, like the Hunger Games. They just get selected. Like they just pick people and the list gets posted. And it's kind of seen as an honor. So like a lot of the nobility wants to get picked for this because it's an honor if you compete and you win. And it's like a really cool societal thing. And you don't necessarily have to kill people. Like it's not like that. It's more of a competition, but it is very Hunger Games-esque in this book. So she has to compete in this. She's terrified because she doesn't have any powers. Everybody else does. And she kind of befriends the prince and the prince's brother, who's like a stepbrother. And he's supposed to become the head policeman, basically, like head of the guard. And so she's essentially screwed because if they find out who she is, she's gonna be put to death. And the king is kind of evil, as you can tell by him putting people like that to death. And so she's trying to hide her identity and survive this game and kind of also potentially help the rebellion. So there's like some betrayal aspects of this you could see. I really liked it. I thought it was a really fun ride. It was very reminiscent of Hunger Games. There was parts of it that bothered me a little, which I'll get into, but I really liked this. I do think it was a mistake for me to put this down. I had like almost finished it when Onyx Storm came out, so I put this down and then read Onyx Storm and then picked it back up to finish it. So coming back to it was a little weird, which is not the book or the author's fault. It's mine. I really liked the characters, but I found myself upset at the treatment of Kit, the prince. I really liked him. And he's not the one you're supposed to be like rooting for, But I really liked him. Justice for Kit. But I liked the tournament. I liked the Hunger Games feel. Sometimes I didn't understand why the competitors were so willing to kill when it wasn't necessary. So like Hunger Games, it's like you have no choice, right? That's the end goal for everybody. For this, it's not. It's like optional. So it felt kind of weird at some portions of this how quickly characters would jump to like, well, I have to kill you. It's like, but you actually don't, because if you lose, nothing's going to happen to you. You're just going to lose the competition. So that felt a little bit weird to me. The banter was great though, and between her and Kai, who's like the stepbrother, the captain of the guard to be. But I also got frustrated at the rebellion and knowing where it was gonna go and wishing other choices were made. That was annoying, but it was very intense and dramatic, and I will continue. I'm excited to read it, and the third book comes out this year, so that's exciting for me. But yeah, I'm gonna continue. Oh, I gave it 4 stars. That was the last book that I completed in January. Overall, it was a great reading month. I felt like a lot of my books, except for the first one, were all like 4 to 5 stars. We're all really highly rated, pretty much. It was a very fun month of reading, actually, and I was very appreciative of that because sometimes I've been kind of in a slump, and those are just a lot of really fun reads. Please comment down below and let me know if you've read any of these or if you have any recommendations for me based off of them. But for now, that is it for today's video. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.